Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next installment of the 30-minute workout webinar series. My name is Angel Espinoza, and I'm an Autodesk infrastructure technical specialist. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Jeff Bartles and Alan Gilbert. In today's session, we will look at how to share infrastructure data. For those of you that are not familiar with the concept of the 30-minute workout webinar series, we attempt to address capabilities beyond the typical need-to-know training. Because it is not possible to cover everything in training, this webinar series intends to show tips, tricks, and lesser-known tools and features that some people never learn about or would learn after a great deal of use. This way, you can make the most of your Autodesk investment. As for ground rules, examples will be abstract in nature to focus on the functionality. Once you learn how the capability works, of course, you can apply it in many other situations. We try to start on time and end on time. We honor your valuable presence. If for some reason you're unable to watch the series live, know that all sessions are recorded, and anyone that registers for the session can view the recording at their convenience. This may also minimize your need to take notes. If you have any questions during the session, please type those in the question and answer pane, not the chat window, but the question and answer pane. Jeff and Alan will address as many of those as possible during the session. I may address unanswered questions at the end. If we are unable to address all questions during the session, someone will get back to you with an answer. If you want to have a one-on-one follow-up chat with one of us regarding a topic that was covered in the session, please type that in the chat window. We always look forward to chatting with people. As for today's agenda, we will cover the following topics. We'll start by talking about, inside of Civil 3D and Autocad, a couple of commands, the difference between share and shared views. We'll talk about AutoCAD web and mobile. We'll talk about InfraWorks, which have similar capabilities regarding shared views. A little bit about Desktop Connector, which is a very important part of the sharing of information. A little bit of the differences between BIM 360 on Autodesk Construction Cloud, which is commonly referred to as ACC, and how to get things into those environments, whether it's a Civil 3D or InfraWorks, sometimes Save As, or other commands like Sync. Very important as a part of sharing, we'll also talk about data shortcuts and data references. And as time allows, we'll get into recap and sharing of point clouds. Very important on the point cloud front because they tend to be rather large files and data sets. So being able to store those in a cloud environment, which generally has unlimited files or allows unlimited files, unlimited file size, and unlimited versions of those files, can be very convenient and remove a lot of the storage requirements from a local network. And very importantly, the last is the idea of recap real views. We see how all of that comes into play. Now, keeping with tradition, this session will be a PowerPoint-free zone. We will be live in product until I recap at the end of the session. Let's begin. So first thing I'm going to do is jump right into Civil 3D. You can see I'm in Civil 3D 2022 and on the home tab in the ribbon section. And I have two drawings open. As I hover over the first drawing, you can see the tooltip up above it tells me exactly where that file is stored. Once again, as I hover on that, you can see that that's location of that file is on my desktop. The one next to it, as I hover, it says users, my login, and it has it says ACC Docs, or Autodesk Construction Cloud Docs. I want to talk a little bit about that. So to start this idea of sharing, I'm going to jump over to the tab over here, Collaborate, and I'll go ahead and select Collaborate. Now, on the Collaborate tab, there's three commands that we're going to discuss this morning. The first one is the share drawing. Very quickly and very simple to use. What that says is shares the links to the current drawing, including its external references. So as I click on that, what we're going to see is a little dialog box that will allow me to share the drawing either as a view-only file or allow it to be edited and someone to save a copy of that file. Now, remember, my current file is only on my desktop, so this can be interesting. So if I choose view only, I'll copy the link. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this link in the chat window, assuming I can find that chat window easily. There we are. I'll go ahead and Control V. And those of you that wish can go ahead and click on that link in the, oh, chat was disabled, wasn't it, for today? Okay, so we'll ignore that part. We'll close that.
Angel, you can still send it to everyone.
Let's see here. Hosts and panels. Oh, thank you. There we are. Control V. Thank you, Marina. So there we go. So there's the link to that file that you can click on if you wish. Now, what I've gone ahead and done is I've already brought this up in a browser, the exact same file that we were just looking at. And I'm going to notice a couple of things that are interesting about this. One, it opens up in what is called Web Autocad. So there is a web version of Autocad that is ultimately being utilized. And it has capabilities. So the properties of objects, if I touch this particular object, it'll tell me the properties of that object. It's on a layer called C Road. It has colored line types, etc. All of that, I'll hit escape to unhighlight that. But other commands, so this is, again, a flavor of AutoCAD run in a browser from the web. And I can click on layers, I can see blocks. But as I pointed out, the first link that I created was for view only. So there are certain things I can't come down here, draw, I can't annotate anything because this is intended for view only. So someone wishes to review this file, they absolutely can, and they can come over here and still turn layers on and off and so forth, but they're not able to do much more than view that particular file. The other option was edit and share, and that's I have open here on this tab. You can see it's slightly different. I'm going to unclick that for starters. Slightly different in that it says here shared. Again, going back to the first one, it says view only right in the title up here. Clicking on this one, it says shared. And ultimately, it does allow for people to do different things, whether it's interacting with the file and ultimately saving that file to their own location, depending upon what's needed or what's wanted. There is another scenario, and that is this web browser. In fact, this browser is pointed to AutoCAD Web, which has the ability to store and retrieve files from various locations. So if I'm just looking here, we can see that it will see this Autodesk Construction Cloud or Autodesk Docs icon, Autodesk Drive, Box, Dropbox, Microsoft Cloud, and Google Cloud. All of these locations can be added as a location to open and close files from. So that can be a very important capability. And then right over here, ultimately, I'm in a file that was the second file that I had open in Civil 3D. So if I come back to Civil 3D, clicking on that second file right here, you can see, again, that location of that file. It says ACC Docs. It has a path and includes demonstrations and so forth. Going back to the web version of it, there's demonstrations, there's the file, and it's the exact same file. So depending upon what I want to do and what I need to do, it's absolutely possible. Now, one of the interesting things that you can do when you allow editing is this capability called traces. And what this does, if I go ahead and activate traces, and I've already created one, so I'm going to click on that. But what it does is it puts this virtual vellum over the top of the drawing, and then anyone can interact and draw. Here is a construction cloud. Construction cloud. I'll add another one there. I can interact with it. I'll go ahead and grab that one if I choose and delete it. But you can see that all of these items were drawn on that particular trace. When I'm done, I can put that back, save the file, and if I go back to my Civil 3D, that secondary file, and I look at the Collaborate tab once again, and then the Traces palette right there, we can bring this up and click on it here, and you can see exactly what was created on that overlay vellum, right? So This then allows me to store information in any one of those locations, but create that overlay vellum to share with other people. And then, or they can share with me informations or thoughts or reviews or comments or anything like that. So I'll go ahead and close the traces here. I'll close that trace and then close the panel. But traces is another way ultimately that things can be shared and so forth. Now, the interesting things about these views and so forth is that they exist for 7 days and only 7 days. Pardon me for just a moment. Okay, I'm back. So these exist for 7 days. Now, a slightly different capability would be to, inside of Civil 3D, coming back over here, instead of the shared views, is the shared drawing command, which brought up this dialog box, is the ability to create a shared view. Now, a shared view, you can see that as I turn it on and off, it creates this palette that allows me to share this in a slightly different fashion. So as I click on shared views, I do have one already created, but basically if I say new shared view, I can click on that. It'll bring up a dialog box. I can name it what I wish. It says share the current view only, or all of the views, the layouts of this file. And this one has a couple of layouts there. I can make it be 2D only, or I can have it share in 3D as well. And all of the properties of the objects can be shared if that's an important part of the process. So once we hit share, I'm not going to finish that. A little icon will appear down here and tell me that it's sharing, and then the result will be that it'll appear on this panel. Now, same thing, that it is possible to come here, and I'll copy that link. I'll place that in the chat window for you, if that's for everyone, and hit enter. And those of you that wish to explore what the shared view looks like, you can do it yourself. This is a little bit different than the shared drawing, because these, you'll notice it says expires in 30 days. And every day you open this, every subsequent day, this will go down by 1. And so expires in 29, expires in 28, until you get near the end of the 30. Now, at the end, or if prior to 30 days I wish, I can absolutely come here and choose the extend option, which will basically reset the counter, and that file would then be available for an additional 30 days from that point. Now, coming back to the browser, I have already opened up this same file. It's the 30-minute workout from Civil 3D is what I called it. This file is already here. And notice that because I did uncheck the 2D only, there is the 2D view and a 3D view. Ultimately, the interesting thing about this 3D view, you can see I can pick and rotate this around, orbit around this thing. It does represent the surface. That was part of that drawing. If I click on the surface, and if I wish to get information about it, like the properties, we can see the surface was called existing ground, and it's on a certain layer. If I expand this a little bit more, we'll see all of the properties of that surface, which include the 2D surface area, the 3D surface area, maximum, minimum grades, number of triangles, triangle sizes, all sorts of information about that particular surface. And depending upon what the object is, ultimately you can see lots of properties related to that. Now, also, I did make sure that it was also going to create the different layouts. So if I click on layout 1, it'll load what layout 1 was, which was the entire site. If I click on layout 2, this was a different representation. This one was of just one of the buildings. And do notice that the image that is associated with that file is visible here. And that image was captured by the geolocation capability, which automatically can load Bing Maps imagery, right? So if I go back to the file just to point that out here, that was the file there. Now, because this image is embedded in the file and not an external reference, the web version of generic Autocad didn't understand the image. Another interesting thing about the web version of Autocad is you must save Proxy Graphics in order to see the very intelligent objects, which include surfaces and alignments and things like that. You have to have Proxy Graphics turned on in order for generic Autocad to see that. And that's typical of desktop Autocads as well. So the web version functions in that way, in the exact same fashion. So we talked about shared views, shared drawings, and traces in Civil 3D. It just so happens that InfraWorks has a similar capability. I can come over here to InfraWorks and maneuver around, and right there, same icon, if I click on it, brings up the same interface for shared views. Now, this one is different. It does include the shared view that I created from the Civil 3D environment, but here is the shared view created from within InfraWorks. I'm going to go ahead and grab that. It has the exact same behavior, 30 days. I can copy the link. I'll place that in the chat window. Feel free to Control V, enter. Feel free to click on that, and you can then explore alongside of what I'm doing. So coming back to the browser, I'll come here, and this is the same shared view that you should all, those of you that choose to click on that, will see this. A couple of other interesting things about this environment. In both of them, whether I mentioned it or not, it is possible to create markups. There's slightly different environments here in 2D. Let's say, so there's the markup capability. I can do measuring, I can zoom and pan and do things like that. Here in this environment, it even goes a little bit further in that I can do things like create a section view. So if I wanted to create a section view, let's do it on the y-axis, and then grab that and create a section view right through some of these items. So if I were to look at it from this perspective, you can actually absolutely see inside of or under some of these capabilities as this full 3D model as you would expect. So I'll go ahead and turn that off. Let's turn that off altogether. Other things, the model browser does tell me things like the surface. I can turn that on and off. I can see the trees, turn those on and off, and ultimately control objects and visibility this way as well. The whole purpose of this, of course, is to share this information with others, and perhaps if they wish, they can create those markups and or add comments. Now, if you do log into either of these views, and if you wish to add a comment, please feel free to do so. What ends up happening is every time someone adds a comment to either of the views, in the one generated from Civil 3D or the one generated from InfraWorks, I will receive an email that tells me someone commented on it. It will ultimately, if I refresh, it will appear here. And every time I respond to a comment, the person that created the original comment will get an email saying that I responded, so they can come back into this environment and take a look at that. So the ability to do and share these files, of course, via shared views can be very helpful for people. And none of that really has required a construction cloud account or ACC. To do that, when we start talking about the Autodesk Construction Cloud, or some people just simply refer to it as Autodesk Docs, right? And Civil 3D has the ability to, if I come back to the Start panel, has the ability to open things from Autodesk Docs. But in reality, that is either BIM 360 or Autodesk Construction Cloud. So these are two different platforms where this information can be stored. And there's a very important tool that I have running down here. If I click on that, it's called the Autodesk Desktop Connector. And you can see the build. I'm currently on the latest version of that, which is 15.0.0.1540. And what that allows then is it synchronizes and embeds itself into my computer, so it can see things like, here, if I go to my computer, that's this PC, it adds itself in here as another, almost like another drive. So as I click on Autodesk Docs, I can see all of the accounts that I've been added to. That's the same as over here. And I can expand and start looking at these folders. I'm in the demonstration folder. I happen to be in a demo subdirectory. And those drawings that I was just in are down here under source files. And those files are stored here. So I can then look at those files that are actually in the cloud and utilize them as if they were local via the Autodesk Desktop Connector. And any changes that are run, it kicks in, and then as it's synchronizing, this populates right here, and I can see the actions of it synchronizing in either direction. So if there's a change in the cloud version and I wish to see it, or if there's a change in my local version and I wish to push that to the cloud, all of that keeps keeps my products in sync. So that means then we have a question for, let's say I'm in Civil 3D and I have a drawing like this first one that was on my, there we go. That's on my desktop. How do I get it up into either of those cloud formats? And one of the simplest ways is to simply do a save as. Because desktop connector, if I do save as, it embeds itself locally. You can see it starts off on my desktop, but I can browse around for it. I did create a link for it right here to go to Autodesk Docs. Again, here are all my accounts. Double click on this. Here's this project. And then I can ultimately save this file. I'm saving a copy of this file in the appropriate folder. And that would be the appropriate way to do that from Civil 3D. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. From InfraWorks, if I'm in a model that is not synced to the cloud, you can see this sync icon right here. And the model that I'm currently in is in fact in the cloud. But if I open up another one that is not in the cloud, I can see the little desktop icon right there that tells me that that model is local. I can click on that and then ultimately store that by hitting the little sync icon up there. And then it'll ask me, well, where do you wish to place it? Which account, which project, which subdirectory? And then I can place and synchronize that into the cloud. Now, so we'll see that load. We'll see this icon is available. And just as I said, when I choose the sync, it'll ask me all of those things. I won't go through that process because the saving process will take just a moment. And we want to do a couple more things yet before we complete our session today. So I'm going to go back to the home. Now, another option is when I create and ask for something to be built via Model Builder, right? Some of you may be familiar that Model Builder allows me to create a model anywhere in the world. And so what I had done yesterday was I requested a model of an amusement park just down the street from where I live. It's called Knott's Berry Farm here in Southern California. I'll go ahead and cancel that. But you can see that it's ready. I've never downloaded it. It says it's a Model Builder model. It's still up in the cloud. And once I click on that to download it from the cloud, at that point, it'll ask me, well, where do you wish to store it? Do you wish to store it in Autodesk Docs, which again, that's the generic term for either BIM 360 or the Autodesk Construction Cloud ACC, or do I wish to store that locally, right? Once that's the case, it'll put it wherever it needs to, but that would be a second mechanism for InfraWorks to synchronize up to the cloud. Again, one, I could use the sync button from within a model that's not synced, or I can, as I'm downloading for Model Builder, choose that environment. Now, as we get near the end of the session, I want to point out here, back in Civil 3D, it looked like it unmaximized. I'll maximize that again. Jeff and Alan, are there any questions up until this point that we can address?
I think we're caught up on this end.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So here inside of Civil 3D, another very important, when we start talking about infrastructure data, right, and how do I share that? There is also a very important capability. It was introduced with Civil 3D 2020.2 and more recent, so 2020.3, all the 2021 versions and all these 2022 versions, and that is what is called the collaboration for Civil 3D. And it's made available for people that have, and I always have to think about the exact name of this, it's Autodesk BIM Collaboration Pro. It has that entitlement. And what that entitlement allows, again, Autodesk BIM Collaboration Pro has this collaboration for Civil 3D entitlement. And what that allows is if I go to my desktop, and if I look at the data shortcuts area, historically, Civil 3D stored the data shortcuts in my local area network, right? So on a server somewhere that I have access to. Well, now as I hover on this, you can see the actual path to that. It says Autodesk Docs, and that's a cloud environment. Well, what collaboration for Civil 3D allows is for me to right click here, set a working folder to one of my projects and one of my project folders in the cloud. And then if I come here and say, create a data shortcut from this file, which has a surface, it has an alignment and so forth, it'll look inside the file and says, well, these are not data shortcutted. I can create a data shortcut from that alignment, excuse me, that surface and this alignment, and then hit OK. And now I'm pushing that information up into the cloud so that my coworkers or anyone that I'm working with on this project can create that data reference on their side. And all that's required is that they be part of my project, right? My BIM 360 project or my Autodesk Construction Cloud project, my ACC Docs project. And they would then, particularly during this work from home environment, so very necessary to be able to share data with other consumers that are not in my immediate office, not in my local area network. So they would then be able to in those other locations now, we can see that there is a surface, there is an alignment down here that can ultimately, we can create a reference in another file, right? Into both of those. So that then will continue to work as Civil 3D always has worked. The creation of data shortcuts, the creation of data references, and they do give us the notification bubble if they change and so forth. The only difference, and the big difference, is that that information will be stored in the cloud. So the last thing I wanted to cover on my side is recap. Now, recap, a couple of different things happen when we store all of the files that are convenient. Let's say all of the LAS files. So I'm coming over here. Here's my project for today, and I can see recap, and then I can see that I have various subfolders here, and then some LAS files. Here's one set of LAS files, and so forth. As long as all of that data is already in this environment, in my cloud environment, when I create a recap project, right, all of that project and all of the subfolders are in the cloud, and we can share them that way. Now, interestingly, when I click on this file to open, that one was already open. But let's say if I click on the other one, and this one was, let's try this one, it's going to tell me I need a sync to make sure that you have the latest and greatest versions of that file from the cloud located on your desktop, and that's when it's in fact going to open. So all of this information is here, but in fact, it's stored in the cloud and synchronized locally via desktop connector down to my machine. So that's an important part of this process. Now, if I look in the browser, going back to the browser, if I look, we did the shared, the file of the AutoCAD. Here's the shared view. Where we did that. We looked at the shared view of my workout. Now coming over here, and if we look at the recap data, it is possible to come down here. I have a file, and there's an RCP file that when I click on it, it's already open right here. It shows me the real view. So this file is in fact the RCP file, and I'm in the measure command, so I'm going to get out of measure and then be able to look around. So this environment, you can see exactly what was in the InfraWorks model. You can see the drawing information from Civil 3D, how it relates to this. But this real view can be utilized. I don't see the point cloud, but I am able to see all of the real views from that RCP up in the cloud. So again, being able to share these point clouds, which has unlimited file types, unlimited versions, and unlimited files, very, very important. So in recap for today, we talked about the share command, which lasts 7 days. We talked about share views, which expire after 30 days. It can be renewed. They can contain comments. We talked about AutoCAD web and mobile. We talked about InfraWorks shared views, which function exactly the same, expire after 30 days. Desktop connector created that ability to synchronize our desktop to the cloud. It's either BIM 360 or Autodesk Construction Cloud. I use the save as. I can command to store things in there from InfraWorks. I can, when I use the model builder, or I can sync, right, to put that information up in the cloud. And data references, data shortcuts are created with ABC Pro, and then recap can put these files up there, including the real views. So that concludes my session today. Are there any final questions?
Oh, we are all caught up on this end.
Thank you very much, Jeff, Alan, and I thank you all for attending. I'll go ahead. We'll go past the question screen. And we wish to thank you for your attendance today. That includes today's session, and expect to see a link for this recording in the near future. Thank you once again.